You're going to want to talk about this one. The morning started like any other on The View. Cameras rolled, the audience clapped, and Joy Behar sat at the table wearing that familiar smirk she's famous for. But today was different. Today Arnold Schwarzenegger was the guest, and what was supposed to be a simple promotional stop for his latest fitness initiative quickly turned into something far more intense. "So Arnold," Joy began, leaning back in her chair with an air of superiority, "you're here talking about fitness and health, but isn't it a bit hypocritical coming from someone who used to pump his body full of steroids?" The audience fell completely silent. Even the other hosts looked stunned by how direct the question landed. Arnold sat across from her, still composed, but you could see something shift behind his eyes. "Joy," he replied, that unmistakable Austrian accent cutting straight through the tension, "I think you have your facts wrong. I have always been transparent about my bodybuilding career, and I have never hidden anything from the public. But more importantly, I am here today to talk about helping people get healthy, not to discuss things from 40 years ago." Joy wasn't backing down. She leaned forward, her voice slipping into that condescending tone her critics know all too well. "But Arnold, don't you think people deserve to know the truth? I mean, you're sitting here telling Americans how to live their lives when your own past is questionable at best." "Questionable?" Arnold's eyebrows lifted slightly. "Joy, with all due respect, I think you are trying to create drama where there is none. I came here to discuss my new program that helps children learn about nutrition and exercise. I thought that was what we were going to talk about." "Well, I think our viewers are smart enough to connect the dots," Joy shot back, her voice growing sharper. "You made millions off your physique, then you went into politics. Now you're back trying to make money off fitness again. It's all very convenient, don't you think?" The other hosts exchanged uneasy glances. This was not the direction anyone had expected the interview to go. Arnold's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed calm. "Joy, I'm going to stop you right there," he said, holding up one hand. "First of all, this program I am talking about is completely free. No one pays anything. We are giving away educational materials to schools across America. So your assumption about me making money is wrong." "Oh, please," Joy interrupted, rolling her eyes theatrically. "Nothing is ever really free, Arnold. There's always an angle, always a way to profit. That's how Hollywood works. That's how politics works. And apparently that's how your fitness empire works too." Arnold's face was starting to show the first signs of real frustration. Yet he kept his diplomatic tone. "Joy, I understand you may be skeptical, but I would appreciate it if you would let me explain the program before you dismiss it entirely." "I'm not dismissing anything," Joy replied defensively. "I'm asking the hard questions that journalists are supposed to ask. Isn't that what you'd want? Or would you prefer we just throw you softball questions like some other shows might do?" "Hard questions are fine," Arnold responded, his voice now noticeably firmer. "But attacking my character and making false accusations is not journalism, Joy. That is something else entirely." The audience began to murmur. You could feel the energy in the studio shifting as people realized they were watching something completely unprecedented. "I'm not attacking anyone," Joy said, her voice rising a notch. "I'm simply pointing out inconsistencies. You come on television shows, you give speeches, you write books all about success and achievement, but you never really address the elephant in the room." "And what elephant is that, Joy?" Arnold asked, leaning forward, his patience clearly running thin. "The elephant that you built your entire career on artificial enhancement, then moved into politics, where you had to make decisions about drug policy, and now you're back telling people how to be healthy naturally. Don't you see how that might seem hypocritical to some people?" Arnold's hands were clasped tightly on the table, knuckles beginning to turn white. "Joy, you are making a very serious accusation without having all the facts. You are also ignoring decades of my work in public service, my environmental initiatives, my work with children, and focusing only on creating controversy." "I'm focusing on the truth," Joy retorted. "And the truth is that you've reinvented yourself multiple times when it was convenient, and now you're doing it again. The truth, Arnold said, his voice now carrying a sharp new edge, is that you are more interested in creating headlines than having a real conversation about helping people. The studio audience went completely quiet, hanging on every word. The other hosts looked like they desperately wanted to jump in, but had no idea how. That's rich coming from someone who's made a career out of creating headlines. Joy fired back. Between the movies, the affairs, the politics, the comeback attempts, you're hardly someone who shies away from attention. And that was the moment something snapped. Arnold's face changed completely. The diplomatic mask finally slipped away. His eyes flashed with an intensity that reminded every single person in that studio exactly who they were dealing with. This was no longer just an actor or a former politician sitting across from Joy Behar. This was a man who had conquered every field he ever entered, and he was done being disrespected. "You know what, Joy?" Arnold said, his voice dropping to a dangerously calm level. "I have been sitting here for 10 minutes listening to you attack my character, question my motives, and spread false information about me, and I have been nothing but respectful to you." Joy opened her mouth to reply, but Arnold raised his hand firmly. "No, you have had your turn to talk. Now it is my turn." His accent grew thicker as the emotion rose. "You want to talk about reinventing myself? Let me tell you something about reinvention. When I came to America, I had nothing. I could barely speak English. I slept on a couch. But I had a dream, and I worked every single day to make that dream a reality." The studio was dead silent. Even Joy, for once, seemed at a complete loss for words. "You sit here in your comfortable chair, making millions of dollars a year to give your opinions," Arnold continued, his voice growing stronger with every sentence. "But what have you actually built? What have you actually created? What have you contributed to make the world a better place?" Joy's face flushed deep red. "Now wait just a minute, Arnold. I've been a journalist for decades. I've interviewed presidents, I've covered major stories, I've informed the public about important issues. Have you?" Arnold shot back instantly. "Or have you just created controversy and division? Because from where I am sitting, all you do is tear people down instead of building them up." The other hosts were exchanging looks of pure shock. This was not going according to anyone's script. "I don't have to sit here and listen to you lecture me about journalism." Joy snapped, her composure completely gone. "You're an actor, Arnold. You pretend for a living. Don't sit there and tell me about real work." Arnold's laugh was cold and completely humorless. "Pretend for a living? Joy, I won the Mr. Olympia competition 7 times. I built a real estate empire before I ever made a single movie. I served as governor of California for 8 years. I have started multiple businesses and foundations. What exactly have you done besides talk?" "I've informed the American people," Joy replied defensively. "I've held powerful people accountable." "Accountable?" Arnold's voice was rising now. "You mean like you are trying to do to me right now? By making false accusations and twisting facts to fit your narrative." Joy leaned forward aggressively. "I haven't made any false accusations. Everything I've said is public knowledge." "Public knowledge." Arnold slammed his hand down on the table, making everyone jump. "You accused me of being hypocritical about steroids when I have been more transparent about that topic than almost any athlete in history. You accused me of profiting from this program when it actually costs me money to run it. You accused me of avoiding hard questions when I have answered every single one honestly." The audience was completely captivated. This was live television at its rawest and most unfiltered. "You know what your real problem is, Joy," Arnold continued without giving her a chance to speak. "Your problem is that you cannot stand to see people succeed. You cannot stand to see people overcome obstacles and achieve their dreams. So instead of celebrating success, you try to tear it down." Joy's voice was shaking with anger. "That is completely unfair and untrue. I celebrate success all the time." "When?" Arnold challenged instantly. "Give me one example from this show where you have celebrated someone's genuine achievement without trying to find something negative about it." Joy opened her mouth, but nothing came out. She looked around at her co-hosts for backup, but they were all staring down at the table in discomfort. "I thought so," Arnold said, his voice heavy with disappointment. "You know, when I agreed to come on this show, I thought I was going to have an intelligent conversation about helping children learn healthy habits. Instead, I find myself sitting across from someone who would rather attack and belittle than have a real discussion." "I was trying to have a real discussion," Joy protested weakly. "I was asking legitimate questions." "Legitimate questions." Arnold's voice was pure disbelief. "Joy, you started this interview by calling me a hypocrite. You have spent the entire time trying to make me look bad instead of talking about the topic I came here to discuss. How is any of that legitimate journalism?" The tension inside the studio was so thick you could cut it with a knife. The audience sat completely silent, watching the confrontation unfold with total focus. "Look, Arnold," Joy said, trying to claw back some composure. "Maybe we got off on the wrong foot here. Why don't we start over and talk about your program?" Arnold stared at her for a long moment, then slowly shook his head. "No, Joy, we are not starting over because this is exactly who you are. This is your pattern. You attack people, then when they defend themselves, you try to act like the reasonable one." Joy's face flushed with a mix of embarrassment and fury. "I don't attack people. I ask tough questions. That's my job. Your job." Arnold's voice was filled with pure disbelief. "Your job is supposed to be informing people and having meaningful conversations. But instead you use your platform to spread negativity and create conflict where none needs to exist." "I don't create conflict," Joy said defensively. "I expose the truth." "The truth?" Arnold let out a bitter laugh. "The truth is that you have been trying to embarrass me since the moment I sat down. The truth is that you don't care about my program or helping children. The truth is that all you care about is getting ratings by creating drama." The studio audience began to murmur, and you could sense the public opinion in the room shifting heavily in Arnold's favor. "That's not true," Joy said, but her voice had already lost its conviction. "It is not true?" Arnold leaned forward with intensity. "Then tell me, Joy, what question have you asked me about the actual program? What have you asked about the curriculum, the schools we are working with, the children we are trying to help? What have you asked about anything other than trying to make me look bad?" Joy sat there in complete silence, unable to produce a single answer. "Exactly," Arnold said, settling back into his chair. "Because you do not care about any of that. You only care about creating your little controversy so you can feel important." The silence that followed was deafening. Joy sat frozen, mouth slightly open, searching for words that simply would not come. The other hosts looked like they wanted to vanish into their seats. The studio audience was so quiet you could hear the cameras humming. "This is exactly what I'm talking about," Arnold continued, his voice now carrying the full weight of his frustration. "You have no answer, because deep down you know I am right. You came into this interview with an agenda to attack me, and you do not care about anything else." Joy finally found her voice, but it was shaky and defensive. "Arnold, I think you're being overly sensitive here. This is how interviews work. We ask challenging questions." Arnold's response was immediate and devastating. "Overly sensitive? Joy, I have been challenged by some of the best in every field I have ever entered. I have faced criticism from movie critics, political opponents, business competitors, and fitness experts. But what you are doing here is not challenging questions. This is character assassination disguised as journalism." The audience began to shift in their seats, some openly nodding along with Arnold's words. You could feel the energy in the room turning completely against Joy. "I resent that accusation," Joy said, but there was almost no real force left in her voice. "I'm a professional journalist with decades of experience." "Professional?" Arnold's tone was pure disbelief. A professional journalist would have done their homework. A professional journalist would ask informed questions. A professional journalist would be interested in the story, not in creating a spectacle. One of the other hosts, clearly desperate to stop the bleeding, tried to jump in. "Maybe we should take a commercial break and come back to discuss the fitness program." But Arnold raised his hand. "No." We are going to finish this conversation right now because I think the audience deserves to understand what really happens behind the scenes of television shows like this. Joy's eyes flashed with anger. What are you implying, Arnold? I am not implying anything, Joy. I am stating it directly, Arnold replied, his voice steady and powerful. You had your producers research negative stories about me before this interview. You came in here with a predetermined narrative that I was somehow hypocritical or dishonest. You had no intention of having a fair conversation about helping children get healthy. The accusation hung in the air like a bomb that had just gone off. Joy's face went pale and she looked around nervously. That's not true, she protested, but her voice was barely above a whisper. It is not true, Arnold challenged. Then explain to me why your very first question was designed to attack my credibility. Explain to me why you have spent 15 minutes trying to tear me down instead of 5 minutes learning about a program that could help millions of children. The studio audience was now completely on Arnold's side. You could hear murmurs of agreement and even scattered applause. Joy tried to regain her composure. Arnold, I think you're misunderstanding the role of journalism. We're supposed to ask the tough questions that others won't ask. Arnold's laugh was cold and bitter. Tough questions? Joy, here is a tough question for you. When was the last time you used your platform to actually help someone instead of tearing them down? When was the last time you focused on solutions instead of problems? When was the last time you built something up instead of trying to destroy it? The question landed like a physical blow. Joy sat speechless, unable to produce a single answer that would sound convincing to anyone in that room. You want to know what the real tragedy is here? Arnold continued, his voice now filled with genuine sadness instead of anger. The real tragedy is that you have this incredible platform. You reach millions of people every day. You could use that influence to inspire people, to educate them, to help solve real problems. Instead, you choose to create conflict and spread negativity. Joy's voice was barely audible. I do try to help people. Do you? Arnold leaned forward. Because right now, you had the opportunity to help millions of children learn about nutrition and exercise. You had the chance to discuss a program that could prevent childhood obesity and teach healthy habits. But instead you chose to attack me personally. How does that help anyone? The weight of his words was crushing. Even Joy's co-hosts were looking at her with expressions that made it clear they agreed with Arnold's assessment. I think our viewers are intelligent enough to want both sides of the story, Joy said weakly, making one last attempt to defend herself. Arnold's response was swift and final. Both sides of what story, Joy? The story of a free program designed to help children? What is the other side of that? That helping kids be healthy is somehow bad? That teaching nutrition is controversial? What exactly are you opposed to here? Joy had no answer. She sat there completely defeated, her usual confidence and aggression replaced by uncomfortable silence. Arnold stood up from his chair, his imposing presence filling the entire studio. You know what? I think I have made my point here. I came on this show to talk about helping children, but instead I have spent my time defending myself against baseless attacks. I think the audience can see exactly what happened here today. He began to remove his microphone, then stopped and looked directly at Joy one final time. Joy, I genuinely hope that someday you will use your platform for something positive instead of always trying to tear people down. You have the power to make a real difference in people's lives, but you have to choose to do it. With that, Arnold removed his microphone completely and walked off the set, leaving Joy and the other hosts sitting in stunned silence. The audience erupted in applause, not for the show, but for Arnold's powerful defense of himself and his mission. The cameras kept rolling as Joy sat there, clearly shaken by what had just transpired. Her co-hosts tried to fill the dead air, but nothing they said could erase the impact of what viewers had just witnessed. This confrontation showed us something remarkable about both character and integrity under pressure.